Welcome to Online Trading Campus and welcome to our OTC Futures course Module 3 Intermediate. Before we dive into the first lesson of Module 3, let me give you a brief overview on the topics we are going to discuss in this module. Lesson 1, Position Size. All futures contracts have a minimum price fluctuation which is set by the exchange and vary by market. In this lesson, we will run through a step-by-step guide that you can follow to help you manage risk, position sizing, and ultimately maintain your profitability. Hence, in this lesson, I will teach you how to determine risk and stop size. You will learn how to calculate position size based on the market of your choice. Lesson 2, Risk Recognition. This lesson covers the whole spectrum of possible risk scenarios. To reduce your risk to an absolute minimum, I will highlight various risk scenarios that go beyond your control. However, if we are aware and understand these scenarios, we can further mitigate our risk. Part of this lesson is to understand what a professional trader calls gap risk. You will learn the fundamental concepts and dimensions on how to mitigate the risk of gaps in the futures market. Lesson 3, Setting up an income and wealth workspace. It is imperative to trade markets which suit your requirements and needs. Therefore, in this lesson, I will spend some time showing you how to create a watch list of markets which will suit your specific trading style for daily, weekly, monthly, and even yearly income. Lesson 4, Economic Calendar. Traders pay close attention to economic events by using an economic calendar. However, just having the release schedule for economic news and events is not enough. In this lesson, I will break down important economic events by country, period, and market impact. We will discuss how economic events can impact certain futures markets and which markets are most affected by economic events. I will guide you how to incorporate the economic calendar into your daily and weekly trading routine. I will showcase how to anticipate when major movements occur, then prepare and capitalize on that volatility by using supply and demand imbalances. So let's start with lesson 1. In this lesson, we will learn how to calculate position size. As mentioned during the module overview, let's run through a step-by-step guide that you can follow to manage risk by proper position sizing. The 3 steps are calculating risk size, calculating stop size, and calculating position size, and we will do a market example based on gold. So let's jump right into it. Let me spend some time here elaborating on account size in relation to risk. One of the reasons many traders gravitate towards trading futures is the relatively low startup cost. For example, it usually requires about $30,000 to open a US stock trading account, and you must maintain at least $25,000 to keep your pattern day trader status. A pattern day trader is a regulatory designation by the SEC, the Security Exchange Commission, for traders and investors that execute 4 or more trades during 5 business days' time in a stock margin account. If you fall under this pattern, you require at least $25,000 in your stock trading account. And let's be clear here, to make just a little bit of ROI in stocks, you need at least $100,000 in your stock account. Otherwise, it is almost not worth it to trade stocks. The futures market allows you to open an account for as little as $5,000, and best of all, you do not have to maintain that amount. As long as you have sufficient cash in your account to cover the margin required to trade, you can actually have a balance of $4,000 to $3,000 and still trade futures. On the flip side, you require much more capital compared to trading Forex and CFDs, and you are limited in regard to determining your monetary risk. With Forex and CFDs, you can always determine your risk and trade even weekly and monthly income setups with only $50 of risk because of the flexibility you have with mini and micro lots. In futures, the tick value is fixed. So by default, the wider the demand and supply zone, the bigger your monetary risk. But we will talk about the pros and cons later on in this course. We would all like to trade an account that has several $10,000s in it. But realistically, most traders start with rather small accounts. These accounts are still tradable, but you must have a very strict risk management. Because you will be operating on a razor thin account size, you don't have much room for mistakes or large losses. If you do have a small account of $5,000 and you suffer a large loss of $2,000, you might not have enough cash in your account to open another trade until you deposit more funds. When accounts are less than $3,000, most traders can only day trade, and we want to avoid that. When trading an undercapitalized account, you will find it much more difficult than trading a larger account. When your account has excess funds, you can build a buffer to help protect you against the inevitable mistakes and account drawdowns due to losses. Unfortunately, small accounts do not allow you this comfort level. Large accounts also allow a trader to be more diversified and flexible in their market choices to trade. Another nice feature of a large account is you can trade more contracts when the need arises. A small account might limit you to trading one single contract, and when it comes time to exit your trade, it is harder to manage. Because of this, you are faced with the question of, do I get out here or let the position run? Usually, this turns into an emotional decision for most traders, and they do not manage the trade well. We are all aware of the psychological challenges a trader is facing, but with a small account, a futures trader has even more obstacles. Futures traders with smaller accounts realize they cannot afford to lose much. Performance pressure will lead to costly errors. This could easily turn a trader into an upside down risk to reward trader. These types of traders usually start thinking that they will just take 1 or 2 ticks profit and slowly build their accounts up. Unfortunately, the market volatility does not allow them to place a protective stop that is in proportion to the reward. For example, you might see a trader risking $100 about 8 ticks on the S&P 500 trying to capture $25. Some traders can make this work for a short time, but eventually the market goes against them and they will not exit the trade because they don't want to lose all the hard-earned small profits. Soon, the market takes back all the small profits, usually in one trade. You can see that risking $100 to make $25 is not a good risk to reward ratio. We try to find trades that allow us a chance to make $100 while risking maybe $30 to $35. Even large account traders will have drawdowns, losing streaks, but their account sizes allow them to continue trading without much added stress, unlike a small account trader. If you do have a small trading account, here's some help for you. I probably made it sound like small accounts cannot succeed at all in the futures market. My intent was to make you aware of how much more care and selection you must put into your trading plan and decisions. Even after your account begins to grow, I would recommend that you take out any excess funds you don't need in your account every month. This way, you will not become careless and give back all your profits. An advantage that small accounts do have is that they are aware of how close they are not being able to trade. Therefore, they carefully plan and patiently wait for their trade setups, unlike a trader with too much money in their account who will take trades on any whim at all because they feel like they're playing with house money. Trading futures is all about using leverage. And this allows smaller accounts to participate more easily than using a cash account to buy stocks with. Keep in mind that leverage can cut both ways, and losses can and do occur. When placing trades, make sure strategy is allowing you at least a 1-to-4 risk to reward ratio. This conservative style trading will allow you to have 1 winner and then 4 losers before you are back to even again. Give the market time to reach your price targets and do not cut your profits short. Doing so will ultimately lead to losses, taking away your profits much quicker. Many traders have a hard time taking a loss and will let their losses run or have too big of a stop for their account size. If a trader will use the 1 or 2% rule for risk management, they will be around for a long time trading. If you use this rule, you will have to lose almost 100 times in a row for the 1% rule, or 50 times in a row for the 2% rule before you wipe out your account. Very, very unrealistic for us. Once your account begins to grow, using these 1 and 2% loss rules, keep on using them regardless of the size of your account. For longer term trades, such as monthly or yearly income, you could even use a 3% to 4% rule for risk management. By following them, you will have a much better chance of surviving futures trading. So let's assume your account size is $50,000 and you use the 2% rule. Consequently, you are allowed to take $1,000 risk per trade. That's step number 1. And please remember, this is now all future specific because it is much more difficult to keep our risk constant. With Forex and CFDs, we keep our risk constant until we reached our milestone and then move to the next predefined risk. Let's now calculate stop size. Step number 2. Let's assume you find this demand zone on the S&P 500. Your entry is at 2007.75 points and your stop loss at 1993.25 points. To calculate stop size, you need to be aware of tick increment, tick value, point value, and ideally the amount of ticks required to 1 point. All of the values you can get from our cheat sheet. Tick increment on the S&P 500 is 0.25. Tick value $12.50, point value $50, and the required ticks for 1 point is 4. So the size of your zone is 2007.75 minus 1993.25 equals 14 points and 2 ticks, or in other words 58 ticks. 58 ticks multiplied by $12.5 equals $725 risk size per contract. Now you can see the problem we are facing. Since we are not able to split the contracts or add micro or mini contracts, we are not able to keep our risk constant. As per our set of rules, we are allowed to take $1,000 risk per trade, but on that one we can only risk $725 per trade. So in futures, every trade you take might have a slightly different risk involved. Now in the third last step, very simple, we divide the max risk size, which we determined in step 1, by the stop size, which we determined in step 2. $1,000 divided by $725 equals 1 contract that you are allowed to take on this trade. For the 3 steps, we will introduce a position size calculator, an Excel file where you can easily insert all the variables and it will calculate the position size for you. I will introduce you to the position size calculator at the end of module 3 in the practical application session. Let's do a real market example and look at the gold chart. It's a daily chart and let's assume we identified this demand zone. It's a level on top of level, right? Our rules is distal level based on wider version. That's how I drew it. So what's the risk per contract on this trade? Let's get all the important values from our cheat sheet. GC tick increment is 0.1. GC tick value is $10. GC point value is $100 and ticks required to 1 point is 10. So my total risk in ticks is 201 ticks and my total risk in points is 20.1 points. So let's calculate stop size first, which is total risk in ticks times GC tick value. 201 times $10 equals $2,010 risk per contract. And then max risk size divided by risk per contract, 1000 divided by 2010 equals 0 contracts. What I realize now is that I'm not allowed to take this trade in the futures market based on my 2% risk rule. Now I have 2 options. Either I look at gold mini and micro contracts. We will discuss this later on in this course, what implications that might have. Or I trade gold in the Forex market with XAU USD or SFCFD futures, which might be another solution. So that's it for this lesson. In lesson 2 of module 3, we will be looking into a whole spectrum of possible risk scenarios in the futures market and of course solutions how to mitigate those risks. So stay tuned for lesson 3.